Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Mobalytics video. This week we're taking a look at the best champions for every single role this season and breaking it down into every single rank too. This should definitely help you guys out when choosing which champions to play, no matter whether you're sitting in the depths of iron or fighting for Master Tier Plus.
So when you face death's terrible jaws, you will not falter!
So we're going to break it down into 4 different ranks based on what we feel are the most suitable groupings. Then we're going to show you the most optimal choices for that role in that rank. We're also going to take a closer look at some of the champion choices with a little bit of insight as to why they are strong and how to play them. So the ranking categories are as follows: Iron and Bronze, Silver and Gold, Platinum and Diamond, and finally Master Tier Plus. Obviously some of these selections will be absolutely fine across multiple ranks, but these are about as specific as we feel is necessary. So first off, let's take a look at Iron and Bronze, and as you'd expect, we're going to start off with the top lane. Our 3 choices here are Garen, Wukong and Darius. All 3 of these champions have fairly simple kits, meaning they're easy to learn and pretty straightforward, even if your mechanics aren't your best traits. These picks are all fantastic in the lane phase, meaning you should be able to win in a lot of different matchups. Most low elo games are absolute fiestas, and these guys are strong enough in the early game to benefit from it. In this elo, matchups are far less important, and it's more about knowing your own champion's limits and how to actually play them properly, rather than your enemies. These champions also snowball exceptionally quickly, and when they're ahead, they are pretty impossible to beat. If people come to that top lane to take you out, you can probably just kill them instead. So when it comes to playing Darius, it's all about knowing your limits. He deals some pretty huge damage early game, and he can beat most enemies in early duels, even from as early as level 1 or level 2. If you've taken Ignite, this is an easy way to fight in those early levels and get an easy kill advantage. Make sure you're using your W as an auto attack reset and space out your Q for more damage and healing. At level 3 you've also got that mini grab, which means if they do survive the fight at level 1 or level 2 and flash away, now you can simply kill them at level 3 with this instead. Darius' level 6 power spike is a bit juicy, so make sure you're always looking for those early all-ins, especially if you do hit level 6 first. When you are playing aggressive on Darius early game, you want to make sure you don't forget about the enemy jungler though, and make sure you're aware of that window between levels 3 to 5 when you don't really know too much about the jungler's whereabouts. If they're ganking elsewhere though, get stuck in. Darius is not actually the best team fighter in the world though, so if you get a lead, stay in a side lane and kill everyone that tries to stop you, and carry the game that way instead. If you are really fed though, don't be afraid to set up flanks and farm those pentakills with your ultimate. Moving on to the jungle now in Iron and Bronze, and the 3 picks here are Mordekaiser, Shyvana and Nocturne. These 3 picks are so strong in low elo at the moment. Shyvana is doing wonders with her tanky AP setup, focusing on Frostfire Gauntlet and Demonic Embrace. Nocturne has always been insane due to those unpredictable ganks when he's level 6, and Mordekaiser has been underrated here for quite some time and he's recently been buffed, so he's now even better. These picks are super hard to beat when they get ahead, and not only do they deal significant damage, but they're also very hard to kill due to their bulky nature. They all have very healthy jungle clears and take down objectives easily, and we all know how important this is when jungling at all ranks. They also have very strong and very flexible itemization, so no matter who you're against and whether you're fed or you're not, you've always got great choices. So Nocturne has been dominating the jungle at lower elos for the last few months, partly due to the strengths he's always had with his ridiculously punishing ganks, but also because he's just so hard to actually beat when he gets a lead. In the early game you can gank pre-6, but all you bring is a fear and a little bit of damage, so you want to prioritise enemies who are playing recklessly and overextending, or if not, prioritise ganking for teammates that have a bit of setup CC instead. Getting level 6 is your main goal though, so make sure you learn the optimal jungle clear and get level 4 nice and early on, and then with your second and third clears you want to keep them nice and efficient so you can get your ultimate as quickly as you can, to start abusing it as early as possible. When Nocturne's got his ultimate, he's one of the most punishing junglers in the entire game to play against, especially at low ranks, and you shouldn't always be looking to cover multiple lanes. Instead, in low elo, just camp the lanes on repeat that have no summoners. In the time that it takes for an enemy flash to come off cooldown, you can gank them a few times with your ultimate and get so fed off them, especially if they continue to overextend. Nocturne has one of the simplest ways to win games in low elo. Camp bot with your ultimate, secure every dragon, and inevitably just win the game from it. Moving on to the mid lane now, and the 3 champions to go for here are Fizz, Malzahar and Lux. These 3 champions all offer pretty different playstyles and strengths, so they don't necessarily share the same qualities, but they're all undeniably some of the best mid lane picks to play at these ranks. Fizz has got very good kill threat, snowball potential and of course mobility, which just means he gets so fed and becomes impossible to catch because he just ease away every time. You can play very aggressive in the early levels as Fizz, and it's important that you do so, as often in range matchups if you don't you'll just get bullied and never really pop off. If you're struggling in lane, roam. Fizz's ganks are very strong, especially when he's got his ultimate, so don't hesitate to try and influence the map if you're not doing too much in the lane. Keep on your toes, spam that mobility and damage, and carry the game by removing those carries from play. Malzahar, however, is all about the laning phase. Push waves, poke your enemies, and just farm them when you have your ultimate. Malzahar is one of the hardest champions to force out of lane in the game, as his wave control and push potential is pretty much unrivaled. You've obviously got to be careful that you don't get too much attention from the enemy jungler, but if you're strong enough and you time it right, you could end up with double kills, especially if they haven't got the CC to interrupt your ultimate. Throughout the game, Malzahar's damage over time just becomes very oppressive, so as long as you don't get too far behind, you should be absolutely fine. Lux, however, is a bit of both really. She's great at shoving lanes and clearing waves with her ultimate, which, as it's on a very low cooldown, you should be using to constantly farm and shove. You've got decent kill threat if you land that Q, and this translates into very potent catch potential throughout the whole game. Lux's roaming is also good, as you don't even really need to move that far to line up a big ultimate. Lux is both a safe pick and one that can really carry, as long as you can land those skill shots often enough. Just be careful picking her into those assassins that can dodge everything and kill you at the same time. Onto the bottom lane now, and here we've got Samira, Veigar and Ziggs. All three of these champions are fairly different again, but they do share some similar qualities. They can all play very aggressive in the early game and often win well in 2v2s too, but also scale really well if you do struggle to close the game out. They're also so damn difficult to beat when they're fed, just due to the sheer AoE damage that they can bring to the table. Even if you kill them, they'll often just take people down with them. They also are fairly easy to play on a basic level. Now don't get me wrong, they have relatively high skill ceilings, especially Samira, but they aren't too hard to get to grips with. Samira is both one of the most aggressive and also a fairly safe AD carry to play. Her burst, AoE damage and resets mean she can often dive into whole teams and come out with huge multi-kills. But her W and her E also act as fantastic defensive tools, giving you the chance to outplay a lot of these bot lanes that are so reliant on skill shots. Samira's 1v5 threat is probably one of the highest in the game right now, and she's so damn good against unorganized teams that don't have the CC to stop her from killing everybody. Stack up that ultimate, dive into teams, press R and spam your E, and have fun carrying the game by yourself. Finally, in the support role, the best three champions for Iron and Bronze right now are Nautilus, Nami and Brand. Nautilus is probably the best tank engaged support in the game at the moment, and he's also the most consistent and the hardest to play against. This is due to his Q being the size of planet Earth and his ultimate being point and click, so they're impossible to avoid. Nami is the most flexible and versatile support in the game too, offering everything that you want from that role: healing, poke, burst, peel and CC. Nami works with basically any champion that you pair her with, so as an all-rounder she's the best pick to go for. Brand on the other hand is just a high damage monster with the ability to completely win 2v2's early game on his own with that ultimate. Brand's early game poke and his damage with his ult are just mental, so if you want to carry from the support role with damage, Brand is a great choice. So that concludes our best three champions for every role in Iron and Bronze. A fairly versatile selection here, but hopefully you can see why they are good, and maybe after watching this video you've taken another look at your champion pool, and now it's time to shake it up a bit. Let us know in the comments how you get on. Let's move up to those silver and gold brackets now, and this is where the game does start to calm down a little bit, and you get a mix of players with decent mechanics but poor game knowledge, and vice versa. Some players here have been playing the game for over 10 years, so they know their stuff, but they just don't play enough to make it count. Starting off with the top lane, we've got Poppy, Yorick and Warwick. So these three champions all have a fairly similar role from the top lane. They are consistent tanky champions. They are great as weak-sided picks, which means they'll do well even when receiving lots of one-sided jungle pressure. And they have plenty of tools that make them useful no matter how the game is going. They also boast fantastic abilities to outplay multiple enemies and often can come out on top, especially when they're being tower dived. These champions can teamfight, can split push and can win games by themselves if they play them correctly. Poppy has been a fantastic champion in the majority of ranks already, and it's fair to say she's definitely underrated. She also received some juicy buffs this patch too, so expect to see her a bit more popular now. Poppy just offers so many unique tools and abilities that make her so hard to beat. She's got the anti-mobility in her W, which actually helps so much when receiving ganks or trades from those slippery champions. She's got great burst damage with her Q and passive, as well as that shield too, and her E is a low cooldown hard hitting CC ability that can really decide those early fights. Poppy's ultimate is a ton of fun to use as well. You can tap it for its damage and CC, or you can channel it and send their jungler back to the shopkeeper. Either way, Poppy just epitomizes the opportunity to outplay, and if you understand this, your limits are endless. In the jungle, we've got Volibear, Rammus and Nocturne. Volibear is just doing so damn well at the moment, and he doesn't really have any weaknesses to speak about. He's solid throughout all stages of games, and he's just so hard to play against with his high damage and durability. Rammus is more than okay at the moment, and to be honest, this guy's just been the king of gold elo all season. Win rate has been super high for the whole time, and there's just no stopping him. Nocturne is also great at these ranks too for the same reasons we mentioned in the previous section. These three jungle picks are just so consistent. They're easy to learn and they're simple to be effective on, so give them a go if you haven't already. The mid lane brings us Vex, Veigar and Pantheon. Again, we've got some slightly different playstyles to speak about here. Vex is an anti-mobility close-range beast with ultimate resets and insane damage and CC. Veigar is a scaling monster that can press R and delete anyone with enough ability power, as well as bringing arguably one of the best and biggest crowd control abilities in the game. Pantheon is a recently changed early game stomping powerhouse, and he wins games by going 10 kills up before the 10-minute mark. These 3 picks are all fairly easy to pick up, and they are nowhere near as hard as you may think they are to learn. Yes, you may need to farm up safely on Veigar and be a little bit more efficient than the others, but his spells and his kit themselves are pretty easy to press. These 3 picks all have exceptionally high carry potential for fairly different reasons. Pantheon is going to one-shot everyone, Veigar's going to scale like a monster, and Vex has the ability to press R over and over again in teamfights. Onto the AD carries now, and we've got Kog'Maw, Lucian and Jhin. These 3 champions are all very different, but undoubtedly fantastic picks at this elo right now. Kog'Maw is a scaling hyper carry that tends to rely on his enchanter beside him. His high range and unreal damage allow him to tear through his enemies one at a time and cut through them like a hot knife through butter. Although he doesn't have any mobility in his kit, if you pair him with the right support like a Lulu or Yuumi, he simply becomes impossible to play against. If you get to the late game when you're playing Kog'Maw, you're going to have a ton of fun, as long as you can position yourself well enough. In Silver and Gold, people just don't know how to play against Kog'Maw, as he sits so far away and shreds everyone down in those team fights on his own. Lucian, however, is all about the lane phase. You probably have the best level 2 and level 3 all-ins for any AD carry, and you can abuse this so easily if you're good enough. Aim to get that level 2 as soon as you can and dash in and destroy your enemy's hopes of ranking up. Lucian offers very frequent mobility with his E, and his passive allows him to outtrade nearly every single other AD carry in the game, as long as he doesn't eat any major CC in the process. If you pair Lucian with the right support, he can snowball ridiculously fast, and as soon as he's got that Mythic and Essence Reaver, oh boy does he seriously deal some damage. Lucian Nami is still an incredible combo, but he also works well with other enchanters and other aggressive supports like Pyke or Nautilus. Jhin is Mr. Consistent. He kind of works into most team comps, most matchups, and fares well with almost all supports too. Now, don't get me wrong, he does struggle with those dive and hard engage comps, but he has the range, and if you play it well enough, they shouldn't be able to get on top of you. Jhin doesn't really have that much of a weak period in any game. He's solid throughout the lane phase with his 4th shot burst and his poke from his Q, and he can often win 2v2s, especially if his ammo system doesn't get in the way. Jin's mid game offers high burst, catch potential, long range fight input, and when he gets to the late game he has all of these things, plus often the ability to delete enemies with his 1-shot potential. His Q, his 4th shot and his Gale Force are insane burst tools in the late game, so if you can use them well enough, you're gonna have fun. Onto those supports now, and at these ranks, Soraka, Zyra and Janna are your best options. All 3 of these picks offer very different qualities, but they're all very effective in their different ways. Soraka boasts the best sustain in the whole game, and her heals throughout the lane phase, the team fights and basically any point in the game just makes so much difference. Zyra offers a huge poking presence, and her catch potential and her ultimate's damage and disengage is huge. Janna is the queen of peel, and those shields and heals make such a difference throughout all stages of any game. If you enjoy playing with a true support mentality and playstyle, then I feel there is no better choice than Janna, and it obviously helps that she's so good at these ranks. Janna really does peel like that proper support that you love playing, and she's got all those things that you really want. Her Q and W are great for peeling or for setting up ganks, her E for those clutch shields and damage boosts, and her ultimate just feels so great, pushing those enemies away and healing up all of your teammates. Janna's kit is simple to learn, but her skill ceiling is very high, and her potential is amazing, as there's so many different heroic plays and things you can pull off when you get good at her. Towards the upper parts of this elo bracket, when you start pushing towards plat, Janna will feel even more effective. As your allies improve, so too will Janna's potential to keep them alive. Well, there you have our picks for the best champions in every role for silver and gold. If you are considering trying out any of these champions, don't forget that Mobalytics provides you with all of the builds and runes and plenty more that you need to get started. So all you have to do is learn the champions as we provide the rest for you. If you've already conquered those ranks, then it's time to take a look at our picks for Platinum and Diamond. Before we get into it though, this is where there's the most amount of player performance diversity. Plat 4 is a very different place to Diamond 2, so it's important that you take your own initiative with these ones and try to understand how they can be relevant for your own specific rank. In the top lane we have some very familiar faces and some of the most popular choices in the entire game: Shen, Fiora and Riven. All 3 of these champions have fantastic split push strengths, and although their playstyles may differ slightly, side laning is definitely one of their strongest traits. Fiora and Riven bring people towards them and 1v2 or even 1v3, and Shen brings people towards him too, but then ults away to sway those fights. These 3 champions are all very strong in the right hands. They all have high skill expression, some more than others, and they have incredible potential when it comes to outplays. The biggest thing about these choices though is probably their ability to overcome the odds, to win fights and situations where they had no right to win them at all. It could be that perfect parry for Fiora turning a doomed fight into an ace and a Baron. It could be Riven getting chased by 3 enemies and turning it around with a perfect flash AoE combo, or even Shen saving the day with a clutch ultimate into a flash 5-man taunt. These top laners have undeniable ways to win games they just shouldn't have won. Riven is having one of the best seasons she's had in her whole history in League of Legends. She is everywhere, and if she gets those 2 items, Gore Drinker and Death Stance, without falling behind, that's all she needs to do what she does best. Her mobility, her damage and her itemized healing makes her a monster, and she's so hard to play against unless you've got multiple teammates and a lot of CC to deal with her. If you can burst her down quickly, she's not going to do much, but if you misplace slightly, she will punish you like no other. Riven can excel in quick AoE bursts, or in those extended fights where you just chase and chase some more. Riven is cooldown based with no resource restriction, so once she's got a bit of ability haste and some maxed abilities in the mid game, she can constantly overcome any bad fight and turn it around into her favour. If you are a mechanically minded player, Riven is one you should definitely be playing in Plat, Diamond and beyond. Into the jungle again, and at these ranks, Rek'Sai, Zac and Wukong are doing wonders. These champions again have very different playstyles, but all share very strong ganking qualities. Rek'Sai and Zac have some of the best early ganks in the game with their unconventional and unpredictable ganking paths that allow them to bypass wards. And Wukong also shares a similar quality now that his clone jumps over walls. Rek'Sai is probably the best early game jungler in the game at these ranks if you can play her correctly and get a few kills under your belt in the early game. She does scale pretty poorly, but if you win the game by 15 minutes it really doesn't matter. Clear a few camps and gank as often as you can, and completely punish as much of the map as possible. Repeat ganks are an easy way to abuse your opponents on Rek'Sai too, as your E into your W knockup is so strong in the lane phase. Your damage with an early serrated Dirk is mental, and if you max your Fury and press E, you can destroy people before they even have a chance to flash away. As soon as you've got that Prowler's Claw, you become a new champion altogether. This item was made for Rek'Sai, so when you get it, it's time to make them surrender. Zac is a tank with an exceptional amount of mobility and CC. His long range engages are some of the most punishing in the whole game, and you almost feel a little bit guilty when you land into that Soraka Jinx for the 5th time inside a few minutes. Zac can clap heads together for even more CC and then bounce around and disrupt his opponents even more with his ultimate. The potential CC chain and burst with this champion is bonkers, and if you do have a bit of follow-up damage, there's not many champions that will make it out alive. From punishing early games to scaling into a brick wall tank with a ton of sustain and survivability, you've got yourself an excellent choice in the jungle. Wukong's been a bit nuts since his changes recently, and in the jungle he's having a brilliant time. He's got that early game damage like a lot of champions on this list, and he's got very strong jeweler potential. His ganks are now much stronger due to being able to sneak over walls and bypass wards, and his ultimate makes him so much stronger as not only is it an AoE knockup and damage source, but you can use it twice. This guy is also a ton of fun. You've got low cooldown burst damage and mobility, you've got jukes and baits with your clone, and you can easily overcome all sorts of fights with all of the things that you offer. In Platinum and Diamond, Wukong's win rate is very juicy at the moment, so if you haven't tried it yet, it's time to see what all the fuss is about. Remember that if you want help with builds and runes for Wukong or any of these champions, we have all of them on our website, so get it installed and get all of that free advice and information under your belt before you head into your next game. In the mid lane, we've got Talon, Pyke and Anivia. Talon and Pyke are all about roaming, early aggression and deleting carries in seconds. Anivia, however, is completely the opposite, and all about being super consistent, controlling waves and lanes, and being very difficult to actually beat. All 3 of these champions though are very effective at this rank. Talon is all about pure aggression and burst damage, and his roaming with his E means you can never feel safe no matter where you are on the map against him. If he goes missing from the mid lane for literally 2 seconds, you simply have to fall back just because of how quickly he can get to you and gank you. Talon's damage, if he gets a few kills under his belt, make him disgusting to play against, and if you're playing an AD carry, good luck. Pyke is fairly similar to Talon really, and he shares the same level of threat in terms of roaming, but he also offers more kill threat during the lane phase, especially with that level 2 all in. Pyke and Talon both have very strong level 6 power spikes, and this means they can use this to really get your blood boiling. Anivia is all about control and burst. She excels at catching out enemies and outplaying them with all the tools she has at her disposal. That wall is so good at helping lock people down or cutting people off, and good Anivia players are definitely more common at these ranks, and this is where she has far more potential. She is fairly tricky to play, but if you can pull her off, she's seriously effective in Diamond and Platinum. If you're a little bit unsure and want to learn a bit more, watch Froggen's stream for a few hours and you'll definitely learn a thing or two. Moving on to that bottom lane now, and this is where you're going to need some big boy mechanics to really outplay your enemies in these games, and this explains why these 3 champions are the best choices: Vayne, Twitch and Yasuo. All 3 of these champions have a stupidly high skill ceiling and expression, and the limits of them are endless. They have the potential to outplay almost anyone depending on the player behind them, and if you're good enough you can win almost any game by utilising the full strengths that these champions offer. Mechanics are a huge part of playing AD carry in Plat or Diamond, so if you aren't playing these picks already, maybe mechanics aren't your strongest quality, but if they are, these choices are without a doubt the best champions you can play to abuse this and climb ranked. Vayne's self-peel and kiting make her impossible to get hold of. Twitch's ambush with his ultimate and AoE burst can carry games out of nowhere. And Yasuo's constant mobility, damage and ability to take out entire teams with his ultimate make him very hard to beat. Finally, the best supports to go for in Platinum and Diamond are Senna, Renata Glask and Blitzcrank. These three choices are also very different, and it's safe to say that if you can play one, it doesn't mean you can necessarily play the other. Senna is a scaling monster that inevitably becomes the main carry later the game goes on. Renata Glask has an abundance of utility to overcome any fights and has insane synergies with other certain aggressive AD carries. Blitzcrank can beat boop and hook anyone to win any game at any point. Despite being very different, these champions are all very strong and very pilot dependent, and in these ranks they have the ability to carry games on their own. Senna is just one of those champions that is perfect if your AD carry teammate doesn't seem to have any brain cells. You can become the main carry the later the game goes on, and the extra range and damage from your passive just becomes insane, and you can pop people down from what feels like a few screens away. Everybody knows just how crazy late game Senna is, but she's also very good throughout the early stages too. Her poke and sustain in lane can be very troublesome, and this can easily allow her to get those items sooner and spike a lot earlier. As well as this, Senna can grab assists and kills across the map with her ultimate too, all adding to her getting stronger sooner rather than later. If you want to play a support that makes you feel like an AD carry, Senna is the best option. So that's Platinum and Diamond covered, and those choices really do prove that the higher you get, the more potential these champions have. If you're seriously good at League of Legends and you're heading into Master Plus, then let's be honest, you might not even need this video. But on the off chance that you are Master Plus and you're interested in what you can play, or even if you're not but you're intrigued as to what really are the best champions at the highest level, then stick around. In the top lane we have Graves, Irelia and Jax. These three champions are just absolute monsters when they are being played by the best players. They all have those qualities that make them so damn good in the right hands. They are fantastic at laning and outplaying their opponents in the early game. They all snowball at a ridiculous pace, and they all have very versatile playstyles as the game goes on. Whether it's side laning, split pushing and bringing enemies towards you and taking them down in the process, whether it's flanking those teamfights and cleaning everyone up in a matter of seconds, or even just full on teamfighting and destroying those backlines without them being able to do anything about it. These picks have a solid amount of skill expression, especially Aurelia, as I'm sure you've all seen before, and this means they always have the opportunity to completely turn fights and come out on top. It doesn't seem to matter what season we're in. There's always items that make these guys viable, and there's always ways that players can make these champions work at higher ranks. In the jungle, we have three of the most mechanically demanding champions in the game altogether: Rengar, Qiyana and Nidalee. These three picks are some of the best champions in the history of League of Legends when they are being played by the best of the best. So what makes these junglers so good? Well, they all have the ability to win any type of fight by outplaying their enemy, which a lot of champions simply don't have the quality to do so. Their kit has the mobility and damage to win in almost any scenario, and if they do win, they just start ramping up so quickly. Any one of these picks can snowball like none other, and before you know it, you're being one-shot by a spear out of nowhere. Or Qiyana wraps up your whole team in her ultimate better than the elves in the North Pole. Whether it's invading, ganking, clearing, or usually the perfect combination of all of the above, these champions are simply the most dominant junglers in high elo. The mid lane brings us three highly mobile champions that have always been good at those higher ranks, and right now they are better than ever. Katarina, Sylas and Ahri. Katarina has always been fantastic at high elo, and that's definitely still appropriate this season. She brings crazy early kill threat from level 2 onwards, and she can often completely dominate her matchup if she does get that early kill. She roams like a monster, and she can clean up fights around the map so easily with those resets and the sheer damage on her ultimate. Throughout the game, Katarina just does Katarina things, and if you lack a bit of CC, you've simply got no chance. Her insane mobility makes her impossible to shut down, so if the player really knows how to abuse her, you might have a bit of a tough time. Sylas got some buffs recently, and he's always had his fun in high elo, due to the insane amount of versatility and unpredictable he offers with that ultimate. Sylas is the king of early skirmishes. The damage he can pump out at level 3 to 5 is unreal, and this is often where he gets those early kills that make him snowball so quickly. There's nothing more enjoyable than being a Sylas main and seeing Malphite and Pikes in Champion Select and knowing you can steal their ults and take their lives with them. Sylas has self-healing, mobility and just sheer damage that makes him a monster in high elo, and as long as his matchup isn't too bad, he often carries games on his own. Ahri got a mini rework back towards the start of Season 12, and ever since then, she's just been on fire. She ticks all the boxes you want her to right now, and to be honest, she's a top pick at all ranks, not only in Master Plus. Ahri's got that catch potential and kill threat in lane, and this carries on throughout the entirety of the game, and if she does manage to get ahead in lane, the damage she deals is pretty insane. Ari's ultimate is so much better now with those potential resets, and this allows her to basically just fight forever. She used to be so reliant on those 3 charges, and if it was on cooldown she was kinda done for. So if you forced her to use her ultimate before a fight, you'd often come out on top. Nowadays those resets mean she can excel in extended fights too, and you never really feel safe against her while she's still alive somewhere. You just know that she's sitting in a brush ready to charm you and burst you down. Onto those AD carries now, and at Master Plus we've got some pretty aggressive choices. Lucian, Samira and Draven. 3 champions with early game damage that can destroy a lot of matchups in the lane phase, leading them into a healthy lead which they can then abuse very quickly. We've all seen what Draven can do in the right hands. The best of the best, the cream of the crop, really know how to destroy enemies with this champion. He's been by no means the most popular AD carry this season, but that does not mean he's still not absolutely brilliant at higher elo. Samira's ability to 1v5 as we mentioned earlier is just ridiculous, and she's so hard to kill with those E resets and the healing from her ultimate. Lucian just wins so many lanes, and in higher elo where supports are very tuned into this, he can roll over the game by himself. All 3 of these champions work well with most supports too, whether it's hard engage and kill threat with Nautilus or peel and sustain with those enchanters. Whichever one they've got, they are more than capable of winning lanes and winning games. Finally, we have the best support champions to play in Master Plus this season, and they are Renata Glask, Bard and Yuumi. Yes, Renata makes another appearance in both Plat Diamond and Master Plus, as right now she's just one of the best supports in the game, offering so much in one champion's kit. Bard has always been an incredible champion at the highest level, and his recent buffs definitely make him a little bit stronger. Yuumi just makes everyone better, and when you've got a one-trick Kayn on your team that's super fed and killing everyone and they've got a Yuumi, the game is simply not losable. So why is Renata Glask just so good? Well, at first glance people thought her W was OP, but apart from that she was a bit useless, and then people figured out how to actually play her. Get that ability haste in as quickly as possible and then you really can come to life. Renata has it all. She's got the shields, the slows and damage from her E. She's got CC and disengage with her Q, and her W brings buffs and potential revival, which is just nuts. All of those things in just her basic abilities, and then you've got her passive ramping up the damage in 2v2s, and of course don't forget the immense potential of her ultimate. It may be a little bit weak in the early game and just used as a quick bit of CC, but at rank 2 or 3 when enemies have got big items, it's just unbelievable. I've seen Renata Glask mains get triples and quadras on their own with just this ability at the right time and in the right place. The limits this support has are just crazy, and if you pair her with an aggressive AD carry that can use and abuse that W, she's just bonkers. Samira and Draven with Renata is probably some of the freest elo you can play with if you can both play each champions well enough respectively. If you aren't playing Renata Glask yet, you're seriously missing out. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of this best champions for every single role in every single rank video. We hope you enjoyed this slightly new style of video, and let us know of anything else you guys want to see next. Good luck in your games in solo queue, and let us know in the comments below what rank you are and where you're hoping to be before the end of this season. Don't forget to download the Mobalytics desktop app and take it with you into your next game. The amount of information and advice you get from it is too good to pass up on, and I was using this app way before I started working for Mobalytics. Thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you all in the next video. Take care.